All right, are you ready to do some more historical digging? Let's go. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the life of William Wilberforce. But not the Wilberforce you might think of right away.
Right.
We're going way back, before the politician, before the abolitionist, back to his younger years.
Yeah.
And we've got some excerpts from a biography to guide us. Turns out, young William was, well, a bit different from the disciplined reformer we meet later on.
Yeah, that's what I found so fascinating. We have this tendency, don't we, to picture these historical figures as, almost like mythical figures.
Right.
But Wilberforce's early life, it was anything but predictable. This is a guy who inherited a massive fortune as a teenager.
No.
Can you imagine?
Well, the pressure.
Yeah, the pressure. It's like being handed the keys to the kingdom before you even know what to do with yourself.
Talk about pressure. What did he do with all that wealth?
Well, from what I gather, his own tutor actually encouraged him to enjoy it. Apparently, someone of his status, someone in his position, had absolutely no need for all that strenuous studying.
Wow.
What a life.
Can you imagine? And here's the thing. It's a double-edged sword, right?
Oh, of course.
Yeah. On the one hand, you've got privilege, you've got access. But on the other, you become a target. People see you as this fat pigeon, just ripe for the plucking.
Oh, I see, yeah.
Yeah.
So instead of hitting the books, he's got to learn how to navigate this world of social climbers and hangers-on.
Yeah.
Not exactly the typical training ground for a future social reformer.
Right. And then what happens? This young man, more money than sense, gets shipped off to Cambridge. Oh, Cambridge. What's going on in Cambridge in, the 1770s?
Yeah, the 1770s. Cambridge was a hotbed of, how should I put it, sober dissipation.
Sober dissipation. Sounds like a contradiction in terms.
Right. It's this strange mix, you see.
Okay.
On one hand, you have this expectation of academic rigor, right? But the reality is it was more about socializing than scholarship. Think constant social whirl fueled by gambling, late-night drinking, very little actual studying.
Sober dissipation. I kind of love it.
It's very evocative.
It is. Paint the picture for us. What does that actually look like? What are people doing?
Okay, picture this. You've got students organizing card games. And we're not talking about your friendly game of whist. These are high-stakes games fueled by expensive liquor, and we're talking debts equivalent to, well, a small fortune today.
Wow.
This was the world Wilberforce was immersed in.
So our future abolitionist, he's got a taste for the finer things in life.
It seems so.
Did any part of him, though, resist this? Amidst all this revelry, was there any pushback, any sense that maybe this was a bit much?
You know what's interesting is that there are accounts of him feeling incredibly guilty after a particularly big gambling win.
Really?
Yeah. He saw how his gain, it directly resulted in someone else's loss. And it really affected him, this realization.
Oh, that's interesting. So even amidst all the indulgence, there's this little seed, right?
Yeah.
The seed of awareness, the sense of empathy for the other side, for those who might be less fortunate. Do you think, and this might be a stretch, but do you think these early experiences, this kind of discomfort with profiting at someone else's expense, do you think that might have planted the seeds for his later work against injustice?
It's certainly possible. I mean, it's always tricky to draw a direct line, right?
Yeah.
From youthful, let's say, indiscretions to a lifelong commitment to social justice.
Right.
But I do think this awareness of inequality, however nascent it might have been at that time, it probably lingered somewhere in his subconscious. It's those formative experiences, right?
Yeah.
They shape our worldview, even if we don't fully realize it at the time.
So we've got young Wilberforce, heir to a fortune, navigating the social labyrinth of Cambridge, and starting to, wrestle with these early glimmers of moral responsibility. What propels him from this life, though, this life of privilege, into the world of politics?
Well, you have to remember, this was a tumultuous time in British history, right? The American Revolution is raging, tensions are high back home, and there's this pervasive sense that the old systems of power, they're crumbling.
That's right. Everything's shifting.
Yeah. You can almost feel the ground moving beneath everyone's feet.
Did that atmosphere, that charged atmosphere, did that play a role, do you think, in Wilberforce's decision to get into politics?
I think it had to have. Plus, you can't discount the influence of his friendship with William Pitt the Younger.
Right. Yeah.
A rising political star in his own right. These two, they'd spend hours debating politics, dissecting speeches, really envisioning a different future for Britain.
It's amazing how those personal connections, those sparks of shared passion can sometimes ignite something bigger, right?
Absolutely.
They were like the political power duo.
There were.
But, and this is what I find so interesting, Wilberforce always maintained that he wasn't beholden to any party, to any one side.
He was his own man.
He was. He valued his independence, his conscience, above all else. How do you navigate that, though, in a system where allegiances are everything?
It's a tightrope walk, that's for sure. And it's one that he would navigate, really, for his entire career. He understood the need for collaboration, of course, but he refused to be confined by party lines. And frankly, you have to remember that in those days, the lines between parties were a lot blurrier. The whole notion of a two-party system, it was still evolving.
This is a bit more of a political free-for-all.
You could say that.
But where does Wilberforce fit into all of this? You've got this, this strong moral compass, but he's also not afraid to enjoy the finer things in life.
Right.
How do you reconcile those two sides?
That's the enduring question about Wilberforce, isn't it?
It is.
This fascinating tension. He enjoyed life's pleasures, but he also held these deeply held moral convictions.
Yeah. It just goes to show, I guess, even historical figures, they're human.
Exactly.
They weren't born these perfect heroes,
Right.
They grappled with inconsistencies, with contradictions, just like the rest of us.
And I think it's those contradictions that make historical figures so compelling, don't you?
Do.
They remind us that, greatness isn't about some flawless ideal. It's about striving to live in alignment with our values, even as we navigate this messy, complex thing called life.
Well said. So, we've got Wilberforce, the parliamentarian, finding his footing. And we can't forget about Wilberforce, the, what do we call it, the socialite.
Oh, yes.
This is a young man about town in London, a city known for its extravagance.
Oh, absolutely. London, in the 1780s, it was a whirlwind of social events, gambling dens, late-night revelry. It was a city that just pulsed with this restless energy.
And Wilberforce, with his charm and energy, he's drawn to it.
Like a moth to a flame.
Exactly. But, this was also a time when, indulgence and vice were rampant. How does he navigate those temptations?
Oh,
it's quite a contrast, isn't it?
Yeah.
You've got this young man accustomed to, a certain level of, let's call it ease, and suddenly he's stepping into the halls of Parliament for the first time.
Yeah, I imagine it was a bit of a whirlwind for him. Exhilarating, definitely, but probably a bit nerve-wracking, too.
Oh, absolutely. And let's not forget, this is 1780. Parliament wasn't exactly known for being, shall we say, the most welcoming place, especially for someone so young.
No, not at all. And keep in mind, Wilberforce, for all his privilege, he's still a bit green when it comes to the rough and tumble of politics.
So how does he play it? Does he charge in, guns blazing, ready to debate anyone who dares to disagree?
Mm-hmm.
Or does he, sort of hang back, feel things out?
It seems like he understood even then that sometimes the best approach is to listen and learn.
Okay, smart.
His early speeches, they focused a lot on issues directly affecting his constituents in Hull, demonstrating that commitment to representing the people who put him there.
Always the loyal representative. But I have a feeling Wilberforce wasn't content just to toe the line. He had that close bond with William Pitt, who at this point is quickly becoming a major force in Parliament.
Oh, absolutely.
How did their friendship, their shared vision, how did that shape Wilberforce's early political career?
It's essential to remember those late-night conversations we talked about.
Right.
The ones where they dissect speeches and debate strategy. Those weren't just, casual chats between friends. Those conversations, they were forging a shared political ideology.
They were crafting a movement.
In a way, yes. But, and here's the thing that I find so fascinating about Wilberforce. He always maintained that he wasn't beholden to any party, to any one side.
He was his own man.
Exactly. He valued his independence, his conscience, above all else. And that's a tricky thing to navigate, even today, but especially back then, in a system where allegiances were everything.
It's like walking the tightrope.
Right, absolutely. And it's a balancing act he'd maintained throughout his career. He understood the need to collaborate, to find common ground, but he refused to be confined by those party lines.
So how do you make sense of that? We've got this deeply moral man, but he's also someone who clearly enjoys, let's say, the finer things in life.
Right. He's no stranger to a good party or two.
Exactly. How do you reconcile those two sides?
That, I think, is the enduring question about Wilberforce, isn't it?
It really is.
It's this fascinating tension, this push and pull between his enjoyment of life's pleasures and these deeply held moral convictions.
It's almost like he's got one foot in the ballroom and one foot, on a soapbox.
The image certainly comes to mind. But I think it speaks to his humanity, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely.
It reminds us that even these historical figures, these titans of history, they weren't born perfectly formed.
Right.
They grappled with inconsistencies. They wrestled with contradictions. They were, at the end of the day, just like the rest of us, human.
And it's those contradictions, I think, that often make historical figures so compelling.
Yeah.
Because it reminds us that greatness isn't about achieving some flawless ideal.
Right.
It's about striving to live in alignment with your values, especially when it's challenging.
Absolutely. And even when it means challenging the very world you inhabit.
It's a real balancing act, isn't it? Trying to find that sweet spot between, enjoying what life has to offer and staying true to what you believe in.
It is. And I think it's that internal struggle that really makes Wilberforce's journey so compelling, because he wasn't immune, right, to the allure of wealth and extravagance. But at the same time, there's this nagging voice, the sense that there had to be something more.
And we talked about that moment earlier, right, when he wins big at that gambling table. But instead of feeling, ecstatic, he's hit with this wave of guilt.
Exactly.
It seems like that experience, it really stuck with him.
It did, because in a way, it reveals this moral compass that would ultimately guide his entire life's work. I mean, here's a young man surrounded by people who see wealth and status as the ultimate measure of success. Right? That's the world he's inhabiting.
Exactly. Yeah. And yet he can't shake this feeling, this deep-seated sense that maybe, just maybe, there's something more to life than just accumulating riches.
That true fulfillment, it doesn't come from a stack of banknotes.
Right. And that's, I think, what makes Wilberforce's story so profoundly relatable even centuries later. Because he wasn't some saint who just appeared fully formed, ready to take on the world's injustices. He was a young man trying to figure things out, grappling with his own internal contradictions and trying to forge a path that aligned with these values that were just beginning to emerge.
It's a good reminder, isn't it? We're all works in progress.
And it's okay to question, to make mistakes, to stumble along the way, as long as we're trying, right? As long as we're striving to live in a way that feels true and authentic to who we are.
Well said. And I think Wilberforce's story, it's a powerful testament to the transformative power of that struggle, of that willingness to wrestle with those inner demons. He reminds us that change is possible, that we don't have to be defined by our past, by the expectations of the world around us.
So as we leave young Wilberforce here, standing on the precipice of his destiny, what's the one thing, the one takeaway you hope our listeners, our fellow history enthusiasts, carry with them from this deep dive? What can we learn from this glimpse into his early years before the name Wilberforce became synonymous with the fight against slavery?
That's a great question. I think, for me, the biggest takeaway is that greatness, true greatness, it often emerges from the most unexpected of places. Wilberforce's journey reminds us that our past experiences, even the ones we might, later regret or view as missteps, those experiences shape us. They give us contrast, they give us perspective, and sometimes they even reveal our true calling.
It's like those early years, the parties, the debates, the highs and lows. It was all, in a way, preparation.
Precisely. And it makes you wonder, doesn't it? What about our own lives? What seemingly insignificant experiences, what choices we're making right now, what might they reveal about our own paths, about our own destinies?
Now, those are questions worth pondering. And on that note, we'll leave you to do just that. Thank you, as always, for joining us on this deep dive into the life and times of William Wilberforce. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep seeking those aha moments that make history so captivating.